Hi everyone, and very warm welcome to our latest Spark session. I'm Emma, one of the co-founders of Spark AI. For anyone who doesn't know Spark AI, we help creative agencies and in-house brand teams to build AI capability across the organization with role-based training and transformation. We do it mainly through our flagship accelerator, which is a 10-week partnership where we help leadership teams embed new ways of working across client services, strategy, creative. We work with, like I said, agencies and brand teams. So Spark Sessions is our monthly webinar series where we show what good AI adoption looks like and sort of live with agencies and what's really happening out there. So today I am super happy to introduce you to Jason. He's the founder of B2B Better, a B2B podcast and thought leadership agency based in Bournemouth, I think, Jason?
That's right, based in Bournemouth, sunny South Coast.
Do you want to say hi, tell everyone a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, hey Emma, and thank you to you and the team for inviting me for the onto Spark Sessions. I had the pleasure of sharing the stage with Jules a couple of weeks ago at the AI Growth Leaders Summit down here in Bournemouth.
Jules is my co-founder, for those that don't know. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we were saying a lot of similar things, getting very excited about AI, and yeah, I was very honored to be welcomed to kind of share some of the things that we're doing here at B2B Better. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, well, I was lucky enough to get a quick preview on what you're going to show today, and it is really exciting. So we start these sessions. Oh, firstly, a bit of housekeeping. Everyone, feel free to put any questions in the comments under this event. If Jason or I can't get back to you while we're talking, we'll get back to you afterwards, but one of our colleagues might be able to get back to you in the meantime. So check back after too. But anyway, back to it. So we always start these events with the same question, which is, Jason, what was your aha moment with AI? What was the thing that made you think, okay, I've really got to go strongly into this with my agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think the aha moment for AI for me was about 7 months ago when I was sat on a status update call with one of my clients. And they're an engineering firm based out in the States. And during the call, minute one, they started vibe coding a brand new website in front of me. And by minute 60, the time we were wrapping up this latest call, they had stood up a full prototype. Copy, design, UX, everything. And like everybody listening to this, I've been using AI tools for the last year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years. But for me, that was like the real light bulb moment where it suddenly transcended from this, oh, I can just kind of like put prompts into a chat and it can kind of give me some information to, this is a tool and a system that I can actually build around my business to make us more efficient, drive more value, etc. And, the output from my client at the time that we wrapped up the call was a bit wonky. The positioning was a bit off. The, UX could do with a little bit of love, but it really kind of struck me as this amazing moment where if an engineer could do an okay job with marketing using engineering tools, imagine what a marketer can do when these engineering tools are now available and usable by them. And so that was, the moment when I said, we need to lean completely into this, think about our entire business and how we can build it around using these tools in the right way.
Wow, but that was like a huge decision because it takes a lot of time to, that you need to resource to invest in it. Did you instantly make that decision that, right, this is just we're gonna align everything towards this? Or was it kind of like incremental? How did you find the time? I mean, that's the biggest question that comes up when we work with our clients. So the biggest, even when we've been working with a client for a while, even though we might be saving time in some ways, it's still finding the time is really challenging in an agency environment right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think it's a bit of a red herring to go down the path of, because we're a small business, we are unable to take advantage of these tools in the same way that perhaps a bigger business has. In fact, I think it's the complete opposite. I think small businesses like mine, we're only a 9-person shop. We are able to adapt quicker. We're able to take more risks without alienating our existing kind of clientele. we're able to, pivot some of our operations and internal workflows in ways where, if you were a 100-person business, it's much more difficult to turn the ship. And so I actually think that for small businesses, the opportunity is immense, that you can now punch way above your weight. These tools to a degree level the playing field, for you against some of your bigger, more well-funded or well-established competitors. If you can, make that decision to make the time. It's like with anything, like the time is there. If you can't find it, it's because you're choosing to spend it on something else. And it's just a case of prioritization. What are we going to let go over here so we can make time over there to invest in some of these processes and the building of some of these systems. And so, to answer your question, it was a bit of an incremental slope for us to get to the point where we got to, and that, as I say, we've been using these tools for a year or two before we decided to go all in. But when we decided to go all in, we went all in. And even today, I think it starts from the top. Like when it comes to embedding AI into your business in the way that's going to help drive growth for your organization, it starts from the top. Doesn't matter how big or small your organization is. You as the founder, you as the leader of your team need to set the example, put the flag in the ground and say, that is where we are going. And for me, that has meant nights where I've been working until 2 o'clock in the morning. In fact, just last night, I was up until 2 a.m. working on a new tool for my team, which is going to help us be more efficient when it comes to delivering work to our clients. And I'm not doing that to tell my team, hey, I expect you to be up until 2 a.m. But if I'm not willing to make the effort and find the time and show the enthusiasm for this new way of working, how can I expect anyone else to do it? And so, yeah, that's how we think about that.
Oh, thank you so much. And I completely agree. I think what we're seeing with our clients is when you have the agility to make decisions quickly without a huge amount of stakeholder engagement and governance and all of that stuff, can really move into this quickly. So I hope that we have people from a big range of business sizes watching this, because I think this is going to be as inspirational for businesses the same size as yours, Jason, but much bigger, and even networks. It just takes longer and a different route to get there for them. But I don't want to hold up any longer getting into a bit of a demo, because that's what everyone is here for. Jason, would you just like to introduce what you're going to talk about? And I'm going to try and keep us to time as well, so that we've got a bit of time for questions afterwards as well.
Excuse me. Absolutely. So there are 3 things that I kind of want to run through today. So the first is our back-end system that we are using to build a suite of new tools to drive more efficiency within our business and drive more value for our clients. And so I can show that back-end and talk a little bit about how it's set up. I want to show the front-end experience, so the directory of tools that my team are diving into every day to deliver on the work that we are delivering for our clients. And then I also want to do a little bit of a test, and this is a live demonstration to kind of show one of these tools in practice. I've not rehearsed it, but I have faith in the tooling and the system that we've built to give us something. And so, yeah, if we're ready to get into it, we can start straight away.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're definitely ready to do the live test as well.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the back end, which is what we're looking at now. We'll then do the test. And then while the test is running, I'll show the kind of like the directory.
Brilliant.
So our operating system, and that's what we call it. We call it our internal operating system. B2B Hub is its official name, is a collection of tools and processes and workflows that are enabled by AI and pointed at very specific problems within our business. We're not trying to create one super master system that can do everything. We're interested in building small tools, agents, whatever terminology you want to use, that can help us fix choke points or solve choke points within our organization. What we're looking at here is the back end, and this is just VS Code. It's almost like a terminal environment. And here on the left, you can see all of the tools that we have built for our organization. Now, essentially, all of these tools are just a collection of folders and markdown files that instruct Claude Code, which is the kind of LLM that we not primarily use to do anything, on how to do certain things, right? So instead of just putting a prompt in which says, hey, write me a blog post on X, we have a tool, a folder, a markdown file that stipulates our insight, our expertise around writing great blog posts or building an awesome landing page or writing a great script or cutting a great video. All of that IP is being codified into these markdown files, into this backend system. All of these folders, and as I mentioned, relate to tools that we have built. We also have context files. And so, for example, here in our clients folder, every one of our clients have a unique context file that explains who the client is, what they do, who their target audience is, how we're engaged, etc. That is used as a reference point whenever one of our tools are activated. So, for example, if we wanted to take a briefing call transcript for one of the podcasts that we're doing, and we wanted to run it through our first pass script generator, so to take the insights from the briefing call and turn them into a rough draft of a script, and we were doing that for B2B Better as a client, the tool would refer to the client context file for B2B Better before it goes ahead and creates the script. And so you would expect then the tone of voice to be appropriate, the formatting to be appropriate, the kind of language it's written in, US English, UK English, to be appropriate to that individual client. And so the way that this works is we just go into Claude Code here. And anytime I want to do something, and this is where we're going to get into the test, I'm going to run the live test here. The first thing we do is we run a pull request. And so what this is doing is it's now looking at all of the context files. It's looking at our GitHub repo, and it's making sure that it understands what the most up-to-date instance of this tool actually is, right? To make sure that we're not working on a stale environment. And so that's going to finish in a second. Now, while that's doing that, I'm going to take a prompt that I've got here, and I'm going to stick this in. I want to create a landing page for my website targeting the manufacturing industry, write the copy, create the images, scaffold the page, and then open in browser. So we're going to run that now in the background, and we're going to go and I'm going to show you the directory. Now, our website is built in Claude Code. So if you go to b2b-better.com, you will see our website. That's all built in Claude Code. We have a website folder here where all of that information is stored. And in that website folder includes instructions on how to create a landing page that we have already developed. So we're going to let that run in the background. I'm going to leave it on screen so you can see I'm not, pulling any trickery here, like that. Here's what I did earlier, and I bring it back in. We're going to let it run in the background. So we'll put that there. So while we're doing that, let me show you what's called our engine, okay? And so this is the engine room, and the engine room is a suite of 29 tools and growing. I think at the beginning of this last week, it was like 24, so we've added 5 since then. A suite of tools that we have generated, as I say, all focused on a very particular problem. And so anytime anyone wants to, find theme clusters in the podcast transcripts that we've generated, they want to run an ad campaign report, they want to, draft some provisional emails that we're going to send out to prospective guests to book them onto our podcast, our project management tool. All of this is stored within the engine room, and all a user, i.e. someone on my team, needs to do when they want to use one of these tools is simply come to the engine room, click on the tool. It then opens up a little kind of descriptor of what that tool is. They then open the tool, and away we go. So my goal when building all of this is, I can work in a terminal because that's an environment that I'm comfortable in, but I need to find ways to make it accessible to everyone in my team, create a great front end user interface, user experience. And all of this has been created within Claude Code using the system that I've just kind of run through in the back end there. So if we go back now to the, see where we're at. Okay, so it's currently pulling everything together. It's going to deploy it as a local preview. And hopefully in a second, we're going to see that go live on the website. whilst we're waiting for that, maybe I can show you one of the tools that we have created.
Jason, what did you create last night?
What did we create last night? We created a tool called the Council. And so the Council basically is designed to help me and my team think through some of our decision making. So whenever we need to make a decision, a big one, and we want some external perspective on it, that we want to look outside the team, we go into the Council, we put the question to it. And so, you can see a couple of tests there that we were running earlier. And so the tool could be something like, I don't know, shall we buy a dog for the office? We then convene the Council, and then we've got 8 different personas, which are then rationalizing the problem, each with a different focus: risk analyst, customer advocate, delivery lead, the owner, the commercial lead, the layperson, compliance, red team, etc. Each of those personas are now looking at the problem and coming up with an argument as to whether it should or should not be done. Once they've done that, they all anonymously review each other's and give feedback. And then that's all then taken to what's called the chairperson to then give you a summary as to whether or not you should do that thing. So that was one of the things that we created last night. Again, I'm not
kind of similar to a synthetic focus group, but just focused on your business.
Exactly right. And here's the page. So this is the page that has just been created based on the prompt. It's just opened it locally onto my computer. And so look, I'm not saying here that we would publish this as is, right? We'd want to review the copy. Obviously the imagery is not kind of centered correctly, but all this copy, all of this imagery is drawing on our brand guidelines, our tone of voice documentation, my positioning statement, my messaging statement, which is all hard-coded into the backend in this context file. And it's using all of that information to drum up an MVP. So then I can go in and I can then make the edits, make the changes, make sure I'm comfortable with it. But then as soon as I'm ready for it to go, I basically just go back in here and say, all right, push that live. And then the page is now live. So this is a very simple example, but you can imagine, right? If you have a system which is also tied up with your transcripts from sales conversations that you're having day in, day out with prospective leads, which our tool is, you could then say in the prompt, create a page for manufacturing clients, refer to all the transcripts of sales conversations we've had with manufacturing clients, and ensure that the messaging is reflecting their pain points, the common objections that they have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can get really clever with how you use these tools to craft really tailored content. Now, once I'm done, if I wanted to push this live, I would say, let's push this live. I'm not going to do that because I wouldn't want this to go live as is right now. But once it's done, I basically I do a prompt called wrap. And now what wrap is doing is it's looking through all of the instructions that I've given in this particular chat and identifying any kind of quirks in how it was built, any problems that we troubleshooted, anything that it may need to know in the future if we create more landing pages to prevent us making the same mistakes again. And that is great because it means that we are in the future saving on tokens. We're not burning through them, trying to relearn things that we've already learned. And the system essentially is becoming this, evolving, kind of self-growing, self-healing type of system. And so, what I've kind of ran through there is then, the kind of back-end system that we've got on how we build all of these tools. I've run through the directory, and you've seen a live demonstration of a web page created from scratch off of 2 prompts.
Jason, that's incredibly inspiring and just quite how, I obviously owning your brand, you'll see all the ways it's off and where they're copied off, but as a first pass, that is an incredible. I was wondering, what was the thing that made you move from individuals using sounds like Claude is your go-to system, but individuals using Claude or sharing projects and using it as a team just through the Claude app or through you using Terminal, and then moving to creating, an interface and a team sort of a team shared space that's more locked down, I guess. What made you? Was there something that happened that made you decide to make that jump, or is it because you saw that other places? Like, how did that happen?
So the first thing I'll say is we do use Claude predominantly across all of our tools, but the way that the system is built is we're not tied to Claude. So if Claude suddenly IPOs tomorrow and it goes terribly and the business goes under, or Trump comes in and says, hey, Anthropic can't trade anymore, the scaffolding, the system, all of that is unaffected, because all we need to do simply then is kind of put an instruction into the system and say, every instance where you are calling on Anthropic Claude to generate X input, replace with Gemini, replace with Perplexity, replace with ChatGPT. And in fact, we can then also start to configure in this tooling different LLMs for different outputs. We have found that with thumbnail generation, Claude is not great, at doing a first draft of visualizing a YouTube thumbnail. ChatGPT Image 2.0 is very good. And so in that tool, Claude is being used to help us, think through the rationale of what a good thumbnail design needs to look like, and what are the psychological triggers that go into persuading someone to click. But the actual image, or the first draft of the image, is being generated by ChatGPT, which we then extract out into our imagery software, Canva or Photoshop or whatever, to kind of do that final pass. So we're agnostic when it comes to LLMs, but Claude Code and Claude is predominantly the one that we're using. To answer your question about when did I decide, to kind of move from just using chat to, creating the system. I think a system is only as good as the kind of consistency that it can offer to the organization, to the company. And what I found was, we did the whole, let's put a load of preferred prompts into a doc, and anytime we do X, let's just make sure we copy and paste it, and make sure that we're, putting in some relevant client information. But humans are human, right? And things become inconsistent, and the outputs are never consistently what I want them to be. And so by building a system in this way, I and the rest of the leadership team here at B2B Better can, almost to a 95, 98% accuracy determine that the quality of the output is going to be what we want before it's handed off to a human to kind of finish off. And that there's consistency across those deliverables. Like show notes for podcasts, there is a tried and tested formula on what they need to look like. And so if you just kind of trust that someone's going to use a prompt in their own ChatGPT or Claude instance, it's never going to be quite what you want every single time. If I can force it in the system, which I am doing, that's good as far as I'm concerned. I also appreciate not everyone is comfortable using a kind of terminal environment. And in fact, I'd never used a terminal environment before I went down this road. And so I need to think like almost a product developer and create tools that work for my team and how they like to operate. So just this morning, in fact, I was demoing a tool to someone on my team that's going to help us better visualize the deliverables that we are sending over to clients. Now it's just a Google Doc. Here's a bunch of assets. Now we've got a web-based version of that tool. And I was showing them how to configure the web-based version using a front-end UI that I'd created. And they said, yeah, that's good. But I think, maybe we can increase the text boxes size so it's more readable for me. Or I can, highlight boxes that are unfilled before I press this button. And so we are very quickly able to kind of configure these tools in a way that suits us and how we work in a very flexible way, but there's still a framework around it. Freedom within a framework, I guess, is how you could think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jason. And while we're just on the kind of technical side, there's a question that's come in about the rest of your tech stack. And I think lots of people will be asking this. I really want to get on to talking about how your ways of working have changed as a team as well. But I know that you may have also reduced part of your tech stack as well. So it might be interesting as part of building this. So it'd be great to cover both those points.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think when you go down this road and you start making all these changes and you start investing your time, energy, budget, etc., in building these new systems, the natural question that you need to be asking yourself is, well, what's the ROI? And you have to understand that, at the beginning, there is going to be kind of like a sunk cost where, you're just doing all of this stuff and you're not quite sure if it is going to pay off, but you kind of believe it will do at some point. I will say that since we started on this journey at the beginning of the year to where we are today, June 30th, recording this, I can confidently say that we've added about 50 grand's worth of value to our bottom line as a result of two things. One, creating new tools that provide more value for our clients that we can upsell. And two, reducing license costs. So ClickUp, prime example. We were ClickUp users for as long as I can remember, and that was costing us 4 or 5 grand a year in license costs. Same with Harvest, same with Forecast, which we use for timekeeping. We've been able to create our own versions of those tools, and would I sell them to an end client? No, I wouldn't, right? But for our own internal purposes, they cut the mustard and they cost us next to nothing. And so just looking at that, I can confidently say that we've saved thousands and thousands of pounds a year in licenses, even when you account for the fact that we're now spending more on like tokens in Claude Code, etc. To answer the question in the chat about our tech stack, yeah, Claude Code, as I mentioned, is predominantly where we're building everything, but Claude Code is also connected and hooked up with our Google Workspace. We've created bots in Slack, which are like tracking client channels and identifying when clients are saying things that we need to be aware of and that need to be updated in the backend context files. E.g., if I got into a call with a client tomorrow and they were like, okay, our podcast episodes are 45 minutes in length on average, we need them to be 20. That's an important piece of information that's going to impact the scripts that we write, the edits that we cut, etc. And so that information needs to be stored somewhere. So instead of relying on a human to track and store that information and pass it on to the various teams, I have a bot that sits in the Slack channel, which every day generates a report for me saying, these are all the things that were said that I think may need to be reflected in your client context files. Approval, deny, approval, deny, approval, deny, right? And so again, I'm feeding into the system so that it's constantly learning, it's constantly getting better. It doesn't just exist in stasis. Yeah, there are tools that we're never going to get rid of, like Google, for example, Slack, etc. And so then it's just about how do we reduce the amount of tools we use and really kind of like focus on building a system around the tools that we know are going to be with us, until the bitter end.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm really interested in how this has changed how you do your work day to day and like your internal processes. I guess as well as introducing AI into your processes as stages, has it caused you to completely rework how you do things? Like you actually do things in a different way now?
100%.
I'd love to hear about like an example of that, perhaps.
I mean, there are like so how has AI changed how we do our work?
Can you remember how it was?
It was tough and labor intensive, and there's a lot of administration that anyone listening to this call will be familiar with when it comes to running a service-based business or working in a service-based business. There's just like a lot of stuff that needs to happen, things that need to be communicated, people that need to be made aware, that if everyone had like a team of EAs, that were totally devoted to them, they would just farm that off to so that we can focus on the good and big stuff. And so for me, it's about how do we kind of create these tools that are going to help give us that kind of capability, essentially. One prime example, previously, we were sitting on like a huge body of transcripts for every podcast that we produce, right?
Incredible resource. Like precious
an incredible resource.
Yeah,
exactly. And a human generated resource. Like AI didn't create those. Like my team of producers and editors and strategists have worked with our clients to craft amazing conversations, with our clients and their clients, prospects, partners, whoever. So that's an amazing, original, novel, input. we publish the episodes, and then they get like a 2-week promotion window, and then we move on to the next one. And so that's a problem because, clients are spending a lot of money on creating these resources, these assets, and typically a lot of them are evergreen. They're as relevant next year as they are today. And so how do we juice more value out of these assets? Previously it required someone on my team to just remember things that had been said on previous episodes and on status calls, be like, hey, maybe we should like tie that podcast episode we did 6 months ago to this event that's happening today. Very flawed as a system. It requires a lot of things going right to actually work. So now we've created a tool which every week, every Monday, scrapes industry news across our client sectors, all the RSS feeds of trade magazines, identifies relevant stories against a threshold of relevance, cross-references those stories against the body of podcast transcripts that we have generated, and identifies links between news happening today and podcast episodes that we published yesterday or last week, last month, last year, and highlights to my team and to our clients opportunities to be resharing this content across their channels. Hey, by the way, did you know that it's the World Cup at the moment, and you interviewed someone, a year ago about hydration breaks and how stupid that would be if that ever became a thing. And like, now maybe you should, post about that episode and point back to it and say, hey, look, this is something that might be interesting to my audience.
Thing. So you got taken away from needing to rely on just the kind of coincidence of people making those connections.
Exactly. I remember being in PR early in my career, and every Friday I'd take home a stack of magazines and newspapers I'd be reading over the weekend to then go into meetings with clients on the Monday and be like, hey, these are some of the things that you need to be talking about. And so that is a problem that can be easily solved with AI without, making any of us as creatives feel icky that AI is coming for our jobs, because then we can take that work, that research that needs to be done, and craft it right into something that we then want to take to the client. Like, what do we actually want to say? We've identified there are links, but what do we want to say about it? And so, as I say, I think about it as like the human sandwich. You want humans on the input, you want humans on the output, and let AI kind of solve the filling in the middle.
Absolutely. Be working when you're not working on those things. We've got a couple of really great questions in the chat to make sure we've got time to answer those. I don't know if you can see them as well, Jason, but I'll just read it out in case others can't see. So Katie says, this is a fascinating insight into running an agency. It really is. Please could you explain how you're charging your clients for making a website like you did in the demo? Or are you making websites for your clients, or is it just for yourself? And I think that's a really great sort of general question about about how you're creating value out of this skill you put into the agency and charging for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great question, Katie. Thank you. So we're not a web development agency. We're not a web design agency. And so we don't build websites for our clients. And thus we don't charge for them, obviously. But we are obviously creating tools which are allowing us to create more outputs for our clients quicker. And in some instances, because we're right now in very much like experimentation mode, and we're trying to like work with our clients on develop these systems. And so there's kind of like this understanding of, we may send some stuff to you that doesn't quite cut the mustard. On any other day of the week, we would say like, we wouldn't put our name up against it, but we're building this tooling that we're trying to make better, and your input's really valuable. And so like, you can benefit from our learnings and our experimentation. And so there's no cost there.
Sharing the risk a bit at the moment. Right?
Exactly. Like, yeah. Don't blame me if that thumbnail puts like a bunch of tentacles coming out of your head, because I'm being upfront and saying like, we're building a system, and it's going to have to go through a teething process. So there's that angle to it, I think. But we have created tools that we very much are happy with, and the outputs that they are generating, and so we've been able to successfully upsell that into our clients. By charging, we're a retainer type based business model. So every client is spending, the same amount more or less every month, X number of outputs. As we create more outputs, we're able to, justify a kind of higher spend. I wouldn't say that we've really systematized it yet. That's a process that we need to go through. But as I say, as we're in this kind of like messy experimentation phase, mutual value, beneficial value, That's kind of where we're at.
I think I'm probably saying for everyone who's watching, what you've done in 7 months is quite incredible. And on that, actually, Stephen's asking, what level of technical competency one needs to create a system like this? It's hard to sort of articulate what level it is, because, yeah, but have a go.
Yeah, hey, Stephen, good to see you again. I have never written a line of code in my life. Up until 6 months ago, I didn't know what GitHub was. This is what I'm talking about in terms of the democratization of engineering tools, So it used to be that, right, like as a marketer, anytime you wanted to build something like a website, or a landing page, or you needed like a brochure designed or whatever, you would need to go to like a technical expert in that domain in order to take whatever's in here and make it a reality. That proficiency gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Everybody on this call, I'm sure, is a lot smarter than I am. If I can do it, anyone can do it. There is a process, there is a system, there's a way of setting these things up, and I'm happy to talk to anyone on this call afterwards around doing a bit of a deeper dive into how we've kind of set it up. But I have no technical experience. I am just curious. I have good people around me that I can kind of talk to and, kind of cross-reference and check things that I'm doing with that maybe I'm not quite sure on. But, again, this has all been done via natural language into LLMs to create the system that we've created.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think it's less a technical competence and it's more a way of thinking and an approach and a determination to put the time to it as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that question. Just one last one from Gareth. Really good point at the beginning of here. So a lot of agencies are still thinking in terms of prompts and which is the best tool to use. But here you're talking a lot more about institutional memory and governance and margin improvement, which is what we tend to help our clients with, which is why we wanted to get you on here. So what for you, Jason, was like the first signal that your agency was ready to move from, we talked about it at the beginning, to move from sort of individually experimenting using AI into this more systematic model? We kind of touched on it, but yeah, like what was that point?
I mean, what was the signal for me that an agency is ready to move from experimentation into a more systemic model? I think the signal is that
you as an individual, that you were kind of like as a leader of the business, that you think?
Yeah, I think so. But I also think like I'm very curious and I love this kind of stuff, and like I'm a bit of a geek, and so I do have a natural tendency to kind of like go deep into things, and I will, as I've said, like I'll stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning working on something until I can see it's working, but that's just who I am. But I would say kind of more broadly, Gareth, like if you're an agency and you're operating in 2026 and you intend to operate in 2027 and beyond, you need to be thinking about building systems. Ultimately, like I'm not saying that you need to outsource everything that you do like to AI. I don't want to run a business where it's just me in a room with a bunch of Mac Minis and I'm pressing a button and like that's the job. But if you're not doing it now, your competitors are, and get on board or get off, like is how I look at it and how I talk about it with the team. This is, I'm not an AI hype bro, and I don't want to come across as that. I'm just very enthusiastic. But this is like the dawn of the internet as far as I'm concerned. And I was too young to take advantage of that as a moment in time. But this is it. Like if you're running a service-based business, if you're not thinking in the form of building out systems and ways of working and finding efficiencies and driving more value for your clients through AI and ways of communicating that to your clients, I promise you, your next 10 nearest competitors are. And when a customer comes to you and says, when a customer's looking at 2 service providers and they're saying, all right, well, one can do more for less and faster because they are building AI into their workflows, and one is not because they're choosing not to or not showing the willingness to learn, who am I going to go with, right? Like I'm clearly going to go with number one, right? So that's the camp that you want to be in, obviously.
I think another good way of thinking about it is the place everyone starts is individuals experimenting and understanding what AI is, what it's good at, what it's not, and all that stuff. The next level is using those prompts and tools across a team and a team-wide shared way of working. And that's where a lot of people are right now. And then Jason and your wider team, you're at the next level on from that, which is taking it up a notch. And you've understood what ways are working and what workflows and where AI is useful in your business and where it's not. And you're able to then codify it into your operating system. So it's a maturity kind of curve, I think.
Yeah.
That you need to go through that stage before to move on to this. Particularly in a larger business, to then to hone down what it is that you want to spend a lot of time hard coding into your operating system.
I feel sorry for larger businesses in a lot of ways, because I show this stuff that I've been showing today to clients of mine, marketers that I collaborate with every day who are working in larger organizations, and they're always impressed, they're always upset, and that's because they know that there's just too much red tape, governance, compliance within their organization that's going to prevent them from not going throw everything at the wall and go as far as we've gone, but even like getting started. Like, how often do I hear someone say to me, oh, well, like I can't even use Claude, like they won't let us. And that's back to my very first point, which is like, I actually think if you're a small business and you can react and you can adapt and you can flex and pivot and experiment, this is the prime time for you. As far as I'm concerned, and that's how we're going forward anyway.
Absolutely. Well, we've gone over time, but this was such a good conversation. I didn't want to wrap it up, but I got one last question before we go. Jason, if there's one thing you'd want people to take away from today, like one bit of advice on bringing AI into a creative business, like what would it be?
The first thing that came to my head was like, oh, just get started, but that's so cliche.
Yeah, I know, same for me. I was thinking the same, but yeah.
Yeah. What's the one piece of advice? It's I speak to a lot of creatives who are rightly quite fearful about what this technology represents for them and for their careers, and hard-won careers, years spent honing their craft. And I understand, I empathize. However, choosing to take a stand to, on principle, say, we're not going to do this, we're not going to lean into this because of what that may represent, I think is a road to disappointment. And so be open-minded. It doesn't have to replace you. It can enable you to do more and do better with the right mindset. And I'm happy to debate anybody on that point who may be listening to this. But yeah, I guess my main piece of advice is keep an open mind. Yeah.
Great grounded advice. So if anyone wants to find out more about B2B Better, we'll pop a link under the video. If we haven't already, we'll put one there. And if you want to follow the rest of the series, we run a Spark session every month. If you go to our website, wearespark.ai, on our events page, we'll be publishing the upcoming series on there. We're going to keep going through the summer. Also, we're just going to pop a QR code in the corner. There's a link to download for free our Spark report. It has loads of case studies of what agencies are up to with AI to inspire all of us. It's our 6 monthly benchmarking of where agencies are with AI. So we'll be published. That was published in Asta across the table will remind me, spring. And the next one will be October. So next one coming up soon. So thank you everyone very much for watching. I really hope you found it as useful and inspiring as I did. I'm probably going to be up till 2 a.m. tonight now as well, Jason. Thanks. No, Jason, thank you so much for so generously sharing with everyone what you're doing. It's incredibly inspiring.
Real pleasure. I think the more we talk, the better it is, right?
Definitely. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Emma.